Good afternoon. I would like to thank everybody for coming out today. The People's Campaign for Equality, Jobs and Justice stand before you today to challenge the government to take action in regards to policies and practices of the banking sector in Bermuda. The People's Campaign recognizes that the banks play a vital role in the Bermudian economy. They are responsible for making funds available to customers and businesses for investment. However, the banks must embrace that households are amongst the principal sources of learnable funds in financial systems. Our banks need to build the confidence of the community by doing all that they can to be empathetic to the needs of the consumers and their employees. The People's Campaign is alarmed with several practices and policies utilized by the commercial banking institutions, namely HSBC, the Bank of Nt. Butterfield, and Clarion Bank. Examples of these include the bank's redundancy policy. Since 2008, the employment within the banking sector, particularly the banks of Nt. Butterfield and HSBC, have reduced by 500 employees. We note that during this recessionary period, the banks have continued with their systematic redundancy policies, especially the Bank of Nt. Butterfield and HSBC. Reduction of mortgage benefits for staff. We are troubled by reports that the Clarion Bank has decided not to honor previously agreed and contracted mortgage benefits provided to staff. This unilateral decision by management of the bank have put staff in a position of being unable to pay increased mortgage payments, leading to financial hardship, selling of properties, and foreclosure of homes. No interest on savings versus increased administrative fees. Bank customers are currently receiving close to no interest on savings at the banks, while the banks continue to erode customer savings through increased fees on savings and checking accounts, safety deposit boxes, and other administrative fees. Lack of willingness to assist borrowers. Sadly, during these harsh economic times, Bermuda's banking institutions suffer from a general lack of consumer confidence and consumer trust because the banks do not appear to be willing to ease the lending rates in order to stimulate local spending and help Bermudians who are finding themselves in economic hardship. Continued feedback from our representative members revealed the angst and frustration with the banks. Lack of willingness to assist employees who have received pay reductions. In September 2013, the Bermuda Trade Union Congress signed a memorandum of understanding with the Bermuda government. As a condition of the MOU, the government was to make contact with the banks requesting that they assist with financial hardship of workers who have been negatively affected by economic conditions. To our knowledge, the banks have done absolutely nothing to assist during this period where we're supposed to be experiencing shared sacrifice. Discriminatory lending practices. The commercial banks continue to discriminate against the seniors in our population. Seniors find themselves unable to borrow funds for banks solely on the basis of age. These are concerns that the campaign have. Reverend Tweed will now go into what we are calling on the government to do.
The People's Campaign is calling upon all those in government, both the governing OBA and Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition, the PLP, to take action in response to the issues we are presenting today by supporting the following recommendations. Number one, we are urging the government to undertake an immediate review of the bank's redundancy policies in order to ensure that Bermudians are not being disproportionately targeted for termination. A review would include, but not be limited to, a review of the current bank employees that are Bermudian compared to non-Bermudian permit holders. Number two, we're also urging the government to establish a process in which agreements can be reached with the banking industry to ensure maintaining levels of Bermudian employment, which, if breached, will trigger consequences determined and enforced by the Bermuda Monetary Authority. If this exceeds the current purview of the Bermuda Monetary Authority, then we ask that legislation be introduced immediately to give the Bermuda Monetary Authority such powers. Number 3, we are also urging the government to undertake a full and complete review of the Bermuda Monetary Authority with a view towards strengthening the regulatory and enforcement powers of the Bermuda Monetary Authority in order to protect Bermuda's national interests. Number 4, given that Finance Minister Mr. Bob Richards has stated as a matter of public record, quote, "The domestic banking environment at present features deposit interest rates at infinitesimally low levels, coupled with excessively wide margins between deposits and loans. And to top it off, banks continue to lay off Bermudian staff. This is on multiple levels contractionary banking policy at a time when we need to expand this economy. Attaining forward momentum is much more difficult to achieve when such an important economic driver as the banking sector is pulling in the wrong direction." This comes from the budget statement 2014-15, page 16. The People's Campaign supports this position of the government. However, to date, it appears as if this position has stalled. The People's Campaign would like for the government to specify what agreements have been reached or are being proposed to get the banking sector pulling in the same direction as the government. Number 5, immediate review of banking lending practices as it relates to the refusal to make loans to persons over 65 who have equity and assets to meet the criteria for qualifying for a loan. This practice is discriminatory and should be ended immediately. It is additionally egregious, given the long history of racist lending practices by banks in Bermuda, that many Bermudians feel that age is also being used as a mask to conceal the continuation of racist lending practices.
On May 1st, May Day, the People's Campaign for Equality, Jobs and Justice presented this manifesto to the government and also to the loyal opposition. On May 20th, we sent a letter to the Premier of the country. We also sent a letter to the opposition leader of the country in relationship to the People's Manifesto. To date, neither the loyal opposition nor the government of today have acknowledged receipt of that letter. The People's Campaign is therefore demanding that the government today and the PLP come forward forthwith to answer the People's Campaign in relationship to our manifesto so we can move the people's business forward. Thank you. Questions?
Do you think there's the political will in the current government to get tough on the banks? What's your read on that?
Let me answer.
We think that the will comes from the people. And so if the government is the servant of the people, then if the people express a will, then the government are duty bound to represent those interests.
But do you really think that this current government will lean on the monetary authority to tighten up their regulations and get tough on the banks? Is that realistic given the current government?
We think that it's realistic for the people to express their will and desire, and the government, who are elected by the people and not the banking industry, have an obligation to honor and represent the interests of the people.
Any of you want to just expound upon, you talked about discriminatory practices. Can you expound upon that? What exactly is happening? You suggest that seniors are not getting the loans that they should get. Could you just expound upon that? What exactly is happening in your view?
I think in the statement that was made, it was stated explicitly that persons over 65 are prohibited or not being given loans, irrespective of their assets or their financial condition. And so we believe that that is a discriminatory practice. If you can make a loan to purchase a car if you're over 65, but you can't borrow against the equity of your home to improve your home, then there's something wrong with those practices.